What's up, everybody? Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers, Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse, right back at you with a new episode of the Real Estate Reserve podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Promise you're going to have a lot of fun with us along the way and maybe learn something as well. So in a second, we're going to bring on our guest, Eric Brewer. He is actually a return guest. He was on the show a few months ago. Actually is right up the street from us in York, Pennsylvania, just over the PA line from where the office is in Maryland. So looking forward to catching back up with him to see everything that he's got going on. I know he's a lot of things have gone on in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, well, with an active, turbulent market, it's good to have people on that in every asset class that are watching what happens in the marketplace. So if you guys get any value out of this, please like or share. We bring on people that are actually doing deals. We don't bring on gurus. We're not selling stuff. These are real people. These are our friends. These are people that we talk to every day that are doing deals, that are out there in the field. Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out. Over the past week, my former employer where I worked, we recently lost 2 firemen, firefighter Rodney Pitts and Lieutenant Dylan Ronaldo, who we worked with. Just wanted to give a shout out and say rest in peace. 2 great dudes. There's guys out there every day protecting, where we live. So don't forget about that. If you have opportunity, the reason we're all successful is to be able to give back. And, times like these, it feels good to be able to help the guys out that need help. So I just wanted to give a shout out. Sad day there. But let's keep it moving, and let's bring Eric in, and let's talk about where the market's going. What's going on? Eric, what's up, brother?
What's going on?
How's it? I know you're just north. Well, I guess you're technically west of me now and north of Jason, but you're up there in central PA. And you want to give everybody a quick background about yourself for those. I know you're a returning guest, but for those that don't know you, who and what you do.
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm a husband. And a father. I have 6 beautiful children, ranging from the age of 19. I have a scholarship level basketball player. Candid, my oldest, starts his season here shortly. I'm anxiously awaiting at Seton Hill University. They play in the PSAC here in PA, and 4 girls in between. I have 4 young ladies between the age of 8 and 2. And then me and my wife just celebrated what I believe is our final curtain call. Eric Jr. was born May 10th of this year. So he just turned 5 months. Business-wise, I have a background that started in the U.S. Army right out of high school. I was a little bit of a lost soul. And literally every male in my family on my dad's side had served in the military, most of them retiring from a branch of the military. So I followed suit, did my time in the U.S. Army, got out, fell into the car business and worked my way up from a lot attendant to a general sales manager of a really, really big Toyota franchise here in York, PA. That led me to real estate. And since 2006, I've been here in York, PA, Northern Maryland, flipping houses, buying and holding rentals. Bought my first 2 office buildings this year. We've done a little bit of everything. I think we crossed the 3,500 transaction mark the middle of this year. And currently have just over 40 employees. This year will be our 3rd year in a row of doing about 400 real estate deals, which is predominantly wholesale, fix and flip, and novation real estate deals. And we keep right now, it's gotten harder to keep rentals, but we still keep about 25 or 30 a year.
God damn, man. I mean, no wonder, man. Like, I guess, for your son to be a D1, or not D1, but a scholarship bound college athlete, you kind of glazed over that. I mean, obviously the work ethic comes from somewhere. A lot of guys and gals, I just say guys as a general term, but, a lot of guys are just like, oh, you guys have it so easy. You just find the deal. It's like, dude, no, like you go out there and bust your ass. I mean, you've done 3,500 deals over how many years now? I mean, that's
17.
17. So I can't even do that math that fast, but that's a lot of fucking deals. What's that, like 150 a year, right? Like that is.
Yeah, it's closer to 200, and it's been 300 or 400 here for about the last 7 or 8 years. So yeah, it's a fast-paced environment we have here. Literally our goal is 36 a month on average. And when you start doing the math of what it takes to get 36 deals across the line, you're talking to probably close to 1,000 people a month. So yeah, it's a race. So that's why I started this year moving a little bit into larger projects, because my legs are tired.
Yeah, well, dude, I get it. That was our big thing going from single family to commercial. It was like go, 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 go. And then it's like, boom, you just do one deal and you're like, yo, now what? Like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on, man? It's like, It's a different world. But I got to ask you, dude, like, you got, obviously, if you could talk somewhat about your team to produce 1,000 sales calls a month to get to 36 deals, what does that look like? And ultimately, what's your culture look like to even get people motivated to make all those calls on an everyday basis? I mean, you got to have one badass culture for people to be able to go out there and do that with you.
It's funny. Like, before we hopped on this call, right? Like, what do you want to talk about? This word culture for me, I think is a pretty important topic, because it's misused an awful lot, misunderstood, I think, an awful lot. And I talk to a lot of people and I'll say, what's your culture? And they'll go, we don't really have one. And I'll go, yes, you do. just because you're not intentionally driving culture doesn't mean you don't have one. Generally, those people will find that their culture, even though they're not proud of it, is one of entitlement. It's one of complacency. It's one of not one that they're proud of. So I would tell you, and this has been a big pivot for me, I would say from about 5 years ago to today, or 5 years ago, I probably couldn't describe our culture, or I would tell you what I wanted it to be because I read it in a book and I thought that's what it should be. And, but it wasn't, I think, a real testament to how our people. So I think your culture is how people feel about their experience when they come to work each day. So I think today our culture is one of learning and teaching. And what I've realized is every time our culture steps away from that, we have to add more process. We have to add more quality checks. We have to add more management. But literally, if everybody here learns as quickly as they can and teaches as quickly and as passionately as they can, I find that we don't have to go back and double check work. We don't have to manage as much. And that today is what I would proudly say our culture is. It's one of teaching. And you can only teach for a sustainable amount of time as long as you're learning. And the reason I think it's important to have a teaching culture is because a lot of places will say that they have a culture of learning, but that puts the onus and responsibility on the employees, right? Well, you guys got to be learning more. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. When you embrace a culture of teaching, it shifts the responsibility to the very top of the organization, in this case being me, to constantly teach. And the better job we do of teaching each day, each week, each month, our results improve, our culture improves, the relationships here improve, our ability to recruit improves, because people then they gravitate towards that culture, where a lot of toxic cultures they can't wait to get away from.
When did you kind of have that aha moment when you kind of started this process of teaching, right? Like when did you kind of go from, hey, early on in the business, I'm just doing deals and I'm a transactional real estate investor, like most real estate investors out there. And now I'm building a team, and now, you're growing a team, you're building a team, you're teaching a team. Like when did that keyword of teaching kind of enter your head and vocabulary of, this is who I am now, and this is how I'm going to take my team and my company to the next level?
So the short answer is probably 6 years ago. The long answer is I got punched in the mouth 3 or 4 times prior to that, and I should have had an aha moment, and I didn't. So the reason I think that's important is because I think when I finally made the decision to behave differently, when I finally made the decision to think differently, when I finally made the decision to treat people differently, is because those 3 or 4 punches in the mouth had me so exhausted that it left me with an option of quitting or making a massive change. And I'm not comfortable with quitting, probably sometimes to a fault. I stay in deals, I stay in relationships, I stay in partnerships probably longer than I could, because the word quit is just it drives a very negative emotional response inside of me. And so I wasn't willing to quit, but I had been beaten to piss. And by beaten to piss, I mean, like, I would build a team, and I was really good at building a team. I was really shitty at like developing and nurturing and teaching that team. And over time, it seemed about every 3.5 years, I would go through like 100% turnover. So I would climb this first mountain with this group of people and achieve really great results, and then instantly go off the cliff and felt like I was dying. And now I'm back to hiring new people, developing these people, teaching these people. And I just was unhappy with that cycle. And I ended up hiring a business coach. That business coach introduced me to EOS. I fought it tooth and nail. Like I could see the validity in it, but it required so much growth out of me, and that growth felt counterintuitive. So I pushed back, and in normal Eric fashion, I hired my business coach to do the work I didn't want to do. I said, "Hey, this all sounds great. I'm bought in, except I don't want to do that work. Why don't you come here and do it for me?" And that worked well, except I didn't realize I still needed to lead him. I still needed to develop him. And then that relationship after 3 years deteriorated. And that so we climbed a bigger mountain with this person here and fell further than I ever did before. So there's no escaping leadership. I actually just did this presentation in front of 300 real estate investors like 6 months ago. It's life or death. If you go back and you look at every situation, good and bad, it's either the example of bad or vacant leadership, or the example of great leadership. And so that's my primary focus today, is how can I evolve each day as a leader, and then pour that into everybody I come across to either lead them or teach them how to lead better.
It's funny that you bring that up. So I just did our mastermind group that I host out in New Orleans, and everybody's like, "Hey man, for the next event," because we always bring in some sort of guest speaker. This time we had some guys come in and talk about trust. Everyone's like, "Hey man, for the next one, can you get a leadership speaker?" And I mean, you got a military background, I got a fire department background. It's almost like confusing. You're like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, what do you own the business? Like, why do you need a leadership conversation at a mastermind?" But then you recognize that, like, if you can become the best leader or a better leader, then it ultimately builds your team better and better and better, and allows you to pour more into people. And I think too many times people think of leadership, lead from the front, is I'm just going to go outwork all my employees. Well, that's not right? Like, your job is to advance the company and put processes and create an environment that allow employees to succeed. It's interesting that you bring that up, just because it's been a hot topic around our mastermind group as of recent, and it mind boggles me, but then also in the same sense, the way you just packaged it up makes a lot of sense, man. A lot of sense.
Yeah, it's leadership may be one of the most misunderstood positions. And by the way, I don't think it's just in real estate. Jason had mentioned, like, real estate investors. It's everywhere. Like little league coaches, basketball coaches, business owners, CEOs, families. Don't even get me started on that. There's a massive, I think, deterioration of leadership at home in the family. And it literally is life or death. And it's not, here's the problem, is normally the behaviors and the thinking that gets people to earn a leadership seat is the exact opposite behaviors they need to emulate in order to fill the leadership seat. It's no longer really about working the hardest. It's not about having the best ideas. It's not about solving complex problems. For me, I've been working hard to take my job description as the leader of this organization, my family, or whatever, down to like one word. I haven't gotten there yet, but it started with like a paragraph. Then I was able to get it down to like 3 short sentences. And now I may have gotten it down to 3 words. And I'm not convinced that I've gotten there yet, but I think for me, it's relationships, experience, and freedom, and in that order. So a large part of my time I spend as a leader developing new and nurturing existing relationships. And then you dive into that. You go, well, how do you build new relationships? How do you develop and nurture existing relationships? It's not helping them do a deal. It's learning about how that person is that works here, what they struggle with at home, what their personal goals are, what their professional goals are, and then helping them get all of that stuff to align, which creates a better experience for the people that work here. And eventually, if you bring in enough of the new relationships, you nurture enough of the meaningful relationships, that will end in the third part of my job description, which is freedom. Freedom for me, I'm no longer handcuffed to the transactional side of our business, and freedom for our vendors, freedom for our investors, freedom for the people that work here. And that for me, if you were to ask me to summarize my leadership principles in this business, it's relationships, experience, and freedom.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you could probably attest to your employees and potential partners are one of your main reasons for your company's success and growth. Obviously, you at the top and leading them, hiring the right people to do so. And, I remember listening to an Alex Hormozy podcast of, I can't grow this gigantic company without having the right people in place. My staff, my employees, my partners grew this company. I was just there to help them and lead them and go down that direction. And I've done a lot of thinking on that over the last, few months. And, Ian and I chat about this stuff all the time. And it's like, in order to take it to the next level, you can't take it to the next level by yourself. You gotta, have the right team in place. And I mean, I don't remember exactly how much staff you had in our last podcast conversation that we did months ago. But I'm guessing that a big part of this is you putting the right people in place, but not only putting those right people in place in the hiring process, but more importantly, teaching them and leading them so they can grow the company based on the overall vision.
Yeah, it's literally my primary focus is so. And I'll remind me to tell you about the tough part of this portion of the conversation, because I may move away from it, but I want to make sure we cover it because it's what I'm living right now. But there's a really good book called A CEO Only Does Three Things. A friend of mine, Trey Taylor, wrote the book, and it's people, culture, numbers. And those are the 3 things a CEO should worry about. And it's funny for me because when situations, houses, deals, hiring pops up, the behaviors that got us to this place of scale or growth or whatever you talk about will make you feel compelled to hop in. And I think, like Ian said, lead from the front. And that feels like maybe being the point person that runs the project. And the reality is each time you do that, I think a lot of us convince ourselves that we're saving people from the responsibility. And what I started where I started to think differently is each time I did that, I said, is it possible that rather than saving them the responsibility, I'm cheating them out of the opportunity? And I think the answer is yes. That often as leaders, what we wear as a badge of honor is like work. And I did this and I did that. Every time we tell and we don't teach, we rob people of the opportunity. And over time, that's how you'll have business owners that come to them, and someone that's been there 7 years will come and say, hey, I'm going to go on to do something else. I don't feel like there's room for growth here. And you're like, room for growth? You can make so much money. You could do so much. But the way that we interact with them and the way that we protect them from responsibility makes them feel like they're not trusted. It makes it feel like they've become stagnant. And the worst thing you can do for most humans, particularly entrepreneurs and salespeople and high, assertive type personalities, is restrict their growth. They'll leave very quickly. And so that's been, a difficult path for me to learn, because when you boil that down to the how it shows up in day to day, is you have to watch somebody fail. and you have to allow it to happen. And in that moment, our ego gets in the way. Our desire financial gain gets in the way of making the more long-term leadership decision of letting them fail, because we see the money that's attached to it. I can't let that deal go wrong. And you may save the deal, but you've slowly killed the person. And each time you do that, you pull a little piece away from them, and over time they just feel empty and they'll leave. And so it's tough, right, to watch a deal maybe die and know that the investment you're making in your team and the investment you're making, I'd still do it today. I struggle with it. There's some times where I'll step into a deal, but I just pat myself on the back, say, hey, at least I'm aware of it. I'm going to improve. I'll get better at it next time. But it is hard, man. It is. I told you, I think leadership's the most misunderstood principle and position. I mean, I've been working at it hard for 7 years, and literally 15 minutes before this call, I sent a group text to 2 of my salespeople that someone reached out to me about buying 4 properties. And I felt myself like offering a little bit too much, right? Because I wanted the deal to get done. And, hopefully after this call, I'll go back and make sure I've firmly placed the responsibility and opportunity in their hands, and I'll step aside. But that's 7 years of still working on it. I still find plenty of opportunity to improve. And it's not about the deal. For me, I got to go, hey, really what I do is I want Justin and Liz to have the opportunity to take these 4 deals across the finish line and learn from that experience and level up. But it's hard, man. It's easier said than done. I can tell you that.
Well, and I think there's another piece to this that you kind of glazed over, and maybe this isn't the tough piece that you were thinking about, but for me as a business owner, and I know Jason and a few other guys that I speak to, we all got these, right? Like you were talking about, like, yo, just put it on my shoulders. I got this. Let's go, boys. Like, you built this thing, and this is your financial machine that pushes out money, and you're like, all right, I got to protect it. But what you don't realize is as you start to push the workload off of you, and that's maybe not the right way to say this, but as you get more team members to help you or push workload off of you, you almost have this emptiness, this unpurpose, like you can almost become unpurposeful. And then you're like, I got nothing to do. And then as a leader, you start to go through an identity crisis and you don't know where to take your company. Sometimes it's just pouring back into your members. Other times it's going to find new asset classes. Other times it's clean up all the shit that you left in the wake while other people are doing other tasks for you. But most people just say, oh, cool, I got employees, fuck it, everything's on autopilot and I'm out, right? And then that's when stuff starts to go haywire, right? And it's the same way with people with property managers. Oh, I got a property manager, fuck it, it's all right. No, dude, your job is to manage that property manager. Like, your job tasks change. And I think you were talking about that. I don't know that people are picking it up, but what takes you to get from 0 to 5 million to get 5 to 10 million is a totally different task set and a totally different responsibility as an owner and how you react to your employees. So they are all good points, man. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
It's funny you say that. I've explained in my leadership journey with people that will occasionally ask me for advice or just ask me to share my experience. I went through what I describe as a mild case of depression when I started putting competent leaders in that place, because the very thing we desired to move away from, which was the work and the stress and the pressure, is the thing that created our identity. I was a problem solver. I was a deal maker. And if you're not careful, you can do 2 things when you start to make that transition from a doer to a leader or a manager, and you'll irresponsibly delegate where you go, hey, it's all on you, thanks. That's dangerous. Or the second thing is we go through this identity crisis like you described, or what I felt was like a mild case of depression, is you'll drift back in to getting like little dopamine fixes of like doing stuff. And it really jeopardizes the integrity of the leader that you put in that situation, because it sends mixed signals to them. Like, do you trust me? Is this really my job? If you have other staff, they're not sure who to go to for questions. And sometimes you may give conflicting decisions or feedback to someone that doesn't align with the person you put in that position. So that's a difficult part of that transition. The challenging thing that I talked about is when you really become a leader. For me, that has become people, right? So new relationships, existing relationships. When you really get good at new relationships, you're going to end up having amazing people that want to come work for you when you're not hiring. And it's going to force you to look at your existing staff. And there's this very, it's called top grading. And it happens when an absolute all-star shows up in your hiring funnel, and you have someone that you get along with that's been there 5 or 6 years, that maybe does a decent job. And this reality of that above average person is holding a seat that may be a phenomenal producer, a phenomenal culture fit, a phenomenal leader, could occupy, but they are no longer able to fill that seat because you're allowing someone of mediocrity to occupy it. That's the difficult part that I was talking about. When you really get good at recruiting, you're going to have to make a decision to create room for extraordinary people. And that may mean letting really good people go. And then that's just like a whole different, like,
But you can equate that to sports, man. I sit there all the time. I'm like, yo, how do you trade this player? How do you sit this person? I mean, watching the Phillies last night, I'm sitting there going, fuck, move this person here, do that, trying to get them to get to the next round. And I'm like thinking, you imagine sitting there saying, hey, listen, Alvarado, you've been one of our best pitchers, but go sit so Wheeler can come in and pitch. Like, how do you even have that conversation, dude? Like, that's just, it's wild to think. I mean, you see it in sports all the time. I don't think people put the complexity behind that scenario that you just described. But that's also a testament to building a badass, we use culture, which is like a key word, right? But building that environment that allowed people to succeed to that point that you have these problems, and that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, it's everybody, appreciate this. It's like everybody wants to do real leader, everybody wants to be a real leader until it's time to do real leadership.
That's right.
And that may mean, so then you start thinking about that. It's like, how would it ever be okay to let someone that's a good performer go with the hopes that what you believe would be a great performer take their place? It's if you gave every ounce of your soul to help that person become great and they opted out, because then it's not even your decision. It's like, hey, I've created the expectations and the ability and access to resources for you to be great. And by the way, great is the only acceptable behavior around here, right? And if I've given you all of this access to resources and the ability and the training and the personal connection and all of that, and you've opted out, it's not me replacing you. It's you saying, hey, I'm not a fit for a great culture. I'm a fit for a pretty good culture. And you're actually doing them a favor by letting them go so they can go be somewhere where not everybody's destined to be great. My dad used to say the world needs ditch diggers too. Yep. Right? But you're holding them back, trying to force someone to be great that just doesn't want to. And that's unfair, right? It's unfair for us to impose our beliefs, our desires on someone else. Not everybody wants to be great, and that's okay. So that's the difficult part of my journey, is after doing all this other stuff, I now have people coming to me that literally could run their own business, that literally are great in their own, and they're going, hey, I want to be part of something different. I like what you have going on here. And I'm staring at them going, I don't have a place for you. And then I look over and I go, I do, but I'm allowing potentially, and it may be me. I might not be the most suitable CEO to run this company. And that's a very humbling experience, right? Where you start thinking about, let's start celebrating people moving from CEOs into ownership seats. That's the real, because a lot of people, myself included, have labeled ourselves CEO, and we're out just grinding with everybody else. We just get paid the same amount. Mm-hmm. I'd like to start a conversation that ends with, how do I move into the owner's seat, right? Am I willing to fire myself out of the CEO seat if another more capable, more passionate, more energetic, more suitable person for this phase of our business comes along? We'll see. Maybe that'll be another interview for another day. But I'm hopeful that would happen, because then, to your point, what you said about when you hire people, how do you behave? You can go at almost every organization. And if I was like, hey, do you have a job description for a loan officer at Hard Money? Yeah, I got that. Yeah. Do you have a job description for a COO? Yeah, I got that. Do you have someone for Mark? You got every job description in the company detailed out, and you know exactly what that person should be doing and exactly how to measure it. And then I'll say, hey, do you have a job description for the CEO of the company? And the answer most often is no. And we're no different than anybody else. We need lead. We need accountability. Where does that come from? It most often does not. And we can be the most disruptive person in the organization if we're left to work without any boundaries. So, the tough part that I'm experiencing now is if you get really good at the other stuff, this theory of top grading comes into play. And for me, I'm struggling with that at this current moment.
Well, I think the CEO being potentially one of the most toxic people in the organization, and for small businesses, I think that's probably a very accurate statement. If they like to hear it or not, related to top grading, and I recall reading that book years ago, the top grading book. I don't even remember who wrote it, but I remember they have a book called Top Grading. I'm assuming it's the same. It was the same thing you're talking about. So let me ask you this question. So let's say you have a B+ teammate, right? You get an A+ all-star. That's like, I want to work for you. And you're like, I'd love to have this person in here. Do you see taking that B+ teammate or that B+ current employee and just moving them, expanding them, keeping them in the mix? And I'll give you an example. We had someone inside our organization who came to me and in essence wanted to leave because they wanted to make more money, doing some other stuff. I wasn't able to fulfill all their skill sets and their drive and what they wanted. And I didn't really have a position for them to do that. But in essence, I wanted to keep them around because it was on me of, you know what, I'm not fulfilling what you're trying to get out of this. And I didn't fully create a position for this particular person, but I molded a position and I was able to kind of use it. I ended up using it as an expansion tool. Created another office, was able to grow, things like that. Like he forced me to do it. That wasn't our intent. So do you think, in a situation like that, maybe it's a reason, you get new talent in the door and then maybe you figure out a way to use that as forced growth, if it makes sense, obviously in your business.
Yeah. I love that. It's, so two things I heard you say there. But I love the fact that you I think you said growth or forced growth, right? That I try and operate like if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to make $600,000 a year. Generally go, I don't have a position that pays that. What I try and do and go, how in the world could I ever justify paying someone $600,000 a year? And then go through the process of writing it down and then say, yeah, I'll pay you $600,000 a year. All you got to do is figure out how to do this. Right. And they might go, well, I can't do that, but I can do 70% of it. And I go, okay, 70% of 600 is 420. Let me take the bottom 30% of this job description away. Can you do this stuff? I can do most of that. I can maybe do like 80% of that. So I don't ever want to say no to anybody. I just want to give them reasonable like expectations of how I would feel comfortable sharing that opportunity and that amount of money with them. And I've done that a few times where I'm now, 4 months ago got into commercial real estate and I wasn't really intending to do it, but there was an extraordinary person that came my way that wanted to make a certain amount of money. And I adopted this philosophy that I'm sharing with you. And I said, hey, if you can do this amount of acquisitions that net and this amount of equity and this amount of cash flow over this 24-month cycle, I'll do it. And we went back and forth a couple of times. Okay, cool. And in our first 30 days, I bought 30,000 square foot of office space at like 47% of value. I now occupy one. It's the one that I'm still moving in. And we're off and running. And it was only because at the time I didn't have a position and I adopted what you're saying of like, hey, how would this forced growth look, which requires a lot of trust. But so far, so good. It's working out really well. We had a 2-day strategic yesterday to plan 2024. And so I think creating opportunities for extraordinary talent that might not live inside of the existing organization is a great way to be able to grow. And I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. I don't know that I had any interest. I don't know that I had the time. I don't know that I don't have the information and knowledge to be able to do what he's doing. And frankly, I didn't want to go learn it. And I don't want to learn multifamily real estate at this phase of my life. But what I am willing to do is continue to learn about people. And I think if I continue to do that, the right people will come before me. And then it's just my job to put them in a good spot and a good seat with the right resources. And I'm excited about that. So yeah, I think that's a great point that you made. And I couldn't agree more.
What's a normal day look like for you? I'm sure a lot of the viewers would be curious to know how close you are to an actual real estate transaction, if you're touching any real estate on a day-to-day basis.
Nah, not really. So like my day now, about 4 weeks ago, I started with, I don't come to, that's why this is, I don't know if you schedule this, but I don't get to the office till 10 a.m. So I have 5:45 to 6:15, I pray and meditate. 6:30 to 6:45, I stretch. 6:45 to 7:15, I exercise. Just light, like a walk or like just movement. I wouldn't even call it exercise at that point. It's movement. And then between 8 and 10, I learn. I'm actively going through a couple different certifications right now of how to be a better leader. I'm learning about influence. I'm going through Vern Harnish's scaling up curriculum, where you become a scaling up certified business consultant. And then 10 o'clock, I get to the office. But by 10 o'clock, I'm already like, I could probably just tap out at 10 o'clock. And I've done enough just professional and personal development that it's been a useful day. And and then from here on out, I'm generally doing things like, I have structured meetings. I normally allocate, 90 minutes to 2 hours for stuff like this, where I'm creating new relationships. I'll probably walk the building 3 or 4 times a day and just check in with people personally, figure out how they're doing, how their kids' T-ball is going, how their wife's feeling. I may invite them to go, like tomorrow, there's a guy that's been here 6 months. He's had an extraordinary impact here. And tomorrow, him and I are working out together. We're going to do something together. So yeah, it's just the rest of the day between 10 and normally 4 p.m. I'm just trying to be a good leader. And for me, that's new relationship, existing relationships, and trying to move people closer to freedom. Yeah, none of which has anything to do with a house for the most part, or a building or any of that stuff. It comes up, but it's not part of my normal regimented day. It's more of an exception than it is the rule.
Yeah. And I think another way to put this is Eric's got dedicated offense time and he's got dedicated defense time, right? He gets up. My superpower is to be good in the morning. So in the morning, I'm doing offensive stuff. In the afternoon, after 10 or whatever you want to call it, I'm here. I'm served up for you guys. What do you want to do, right? You're helping advance your employees. You're helping advance your company, whatever it is. Maybe there is some defensive stuff that you need to do. So that's really good. Can you talk a little bit as we wrap up here? You want to talk a little bit about your journey into commercial real estate and really like where are you bouncing ideas off of, right? Like you go into mastermind groups, like who's your circle of trust to be like, yo, I got this problem. What, where am I bouncing these ideas off of? Because I got to assume going from single family to commercial has been a journey as we all go through.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in masterminds. I've been in the collective genius now for 7 years. But I tell you the thing, and I want to share with you, particularly for those, and everybody on this call has reached a certain level of status. And I did a post about this the other day where I actually see, and you guys may believe this, and I'm here to challenge your thinking on this. If you and I see this differently, I want you to think about this maybe from my perspective for 1 second. Anybody that's listening to this, did you guys ever see gurus, teachers, executives, managers, business owners, department leaders, like tell you not to allow people to pick your brain. Your time's too valuable. You ever seen that? Where they're like, you're not focused enough. Like I believe the opposite. And by belief, I mean that I've moved in a different direction and I've gotten extraordinary results from it. So masterminds are cool. If you're not in one, go get in one. Find a group of people that are either doing what you want to do or have already done it. You hear all that stuff, right? Never be the smartest room. Go find a room where you're considered to be an idiot. Go do that. I would also tell you that I found and am shocked at how much value I get out of ordinary people that on the surface you believe is an asymmetrical relationship. Someone wants to pick your brain right. And what do they say? Well, they have nothing to offer you. They got to bring value. Your time's more valuable than an hour lunch with someone that all they want to do is learn from Eric what took him 15 years to fail and struggle through himself. It's unfair for people to expect. That's absolute bullshit. Matter of fact, once you reach this point of status, I would push back and say you have an obligation to give that to other people, right? Like who in the hell makes you think that now all this information and experience and access to resources belongs to you? It belongs to God, if we're being honest. And I've found that by 19-year-old wholesalers that want to pick my brain. So I carve out 2 hours a day that someone can have breakfast with me and someone can have lunch with me. There's 2 of those I eat every day, right? So to me, it's good time management where it's serving a dual purpose. And you'd be amazed at the value you'll get from complete strangers that on the surface, it appears that they have nothing to offer you. Right. And matter of fact, this morning I had freaking breakfast with my pastor, who has, since this journey, has become a dear friend of mine. And he's helped my business. He's helped my personal life. He's helped my marriage. He's helped and it all started with he wanted to learn a little bit about real estate, and he wanted to he was interested in it. Most people, other than him being a pastor, might have said, no, I don't have time. You can't pick my brain. And as a result of me being receptive to that, it's opened up a tremendous amount of doors. The commercial guy was one of those. He wanted some leadership advice. He had reached a point in commercial real estate, and he was a financial advisor. And he had 1,000 clients and was basically managing them all himself and struggled to hire people and manage people and build a team. And that developed into, we bought $40 million worth of real estate in 90 days. So I would tell you, and to Ian's point, typically 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is about me. The rest of the day, I try and make myself available for other people.
And listen, everybody's an expert, right? You're an expert at real estate. You're an expert at leadership. You're an expert at growing a business. But like you said, the 19-year-old kid, he's an expert at something, right? And it's something that you don't even know that he's an expert in. He might even not even know he's an expert in it. But having that open, candid, chat brings it out of it. I 100% agree. You can learn from anybody.
It creates validation in your points, right? Like you sit here and you have it's what makes you burn, right? Like it's that fire inside you. So you're gonna sit down and have this lunch with this random person and you're like, yeah, man, this is why real estate's the best. And then you start talking about it. And then all of a sudden, either A, you truly believe in it, or B, you realize you're a massive fucking fraud, right? Like it's one of the two things that are going to happen. You're either A, going to stop having lunch, or B, you're going to stop telling people about that and really tell people what you believe. And I think there's something about having that candid conversation with some random person you don't know versus saying, hey, Eric, and you're like, no, dude, I know you're like this. No, dude, I'm telling you, I'm changing, right? Versus having a conversation with a random person where you get to really express, almost be an artist per se, and get out there and tell people who and what you believe in. I will agree with you all the way up to the point. At some point, you need to be a little defensive of your time at some point because it can get chewed up really fast. That's my only caveat to your point. But other than that,
you're 100% right. Just be more disciplined with the time you already have.
Correct.
Does that make sense? So yes, so what I'm saying is I don't if you text me today, I probably can't go to lunch, but 3 weeks from now I can. And in order for me to do that, the time between today and that lunch 3 weeks from now, I have to be more disciplined. There's plenty of time in a day. And there's a reason why some people get a ton done, and there's a reason why people chase their tail. That's a whole separate conversation. But discipline with the time that we're given is the problem. Like I never could be, I think one of you said something about the importance of win in the morning. I, for the longest time, said I wasn't a morning person. And as I started working on it more, I realized because I was a horrible nighttime person. I was up on my phone, watching TV, doing meaningless bullshit. And I go, man, I suck in the mornings, bro. It's because you went to bed at 3 a.m. So it wasn't until I got more disciplined with my nighttime routine that I found that as long as I go to bed at 10 o'clock, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. is not that big of a deal. So I've been inching it back like 5 minutes where it started at like 6:45 and now I'm at 5:45 after a couple years of working on it. So
yeah, goddamn Philly's got me this week. Man, it's been a couple late nights and I'm like, yo, I can't do this shit anymore. Like I used to be in the fire department. We stay up all night. It was no issue. And then you start respecting your sleep and your time and you're like, yo, dude, I actually need to go to bed at a normal time because I forgot what it's like to be up all the time. So really appreciate all your time and all the points you've been dropping. I know you've already dumped a ton of value, and I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this. But what's one book or podcast that you're reading or listening to now that you think everybody should go check out?
Can I give you two?
Sure, let it rip.
These are recent reads of mine, one of which I read before, but it's taken on a new meaning for me. Gapology. It's great for managers. And the concept that you get from that is how winning leaders close performance gaps. So it gives you a really rigid, simple framework of how to close performance gaps in your organization. It'll start to encourage you in the direction of being a better teacher. And the second that I just finished for the second time reading it is Crucial Conversations. It's a remarkable book. And I would say those two are extremely valuable books to learn from, particularly if you're managing people or an organization.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about this, talking about managing people, some of this shit applies to managing yourself. If you truly view yourself as the owner versus the CEO versus the employee in your company. I was just thinking about that as you were dropping these books, because some people might say, I don't need to read that. Yeah, you do, because if you're going to have a team or you're only going to manage yourself, you should view yourself in these same roles. Eric, where's the best place people can find you out on the interwebs if they do want to schedule this lunch 3 weeks from now?
Instagram. It's the best play. I put out 3 to 4 pieces of content a day, just stuff where I'm sharing the journey I'm going through. And that is Eric_Brewer_invest on Instagram.
Hell yeah. We'll get all that up in the show notes. So if you guys want to have lunch, make sure you take a picture and reference us when you're out there.
I always buy too. So that's an upside. Even if, you're just looking for a decent lunch in York, PA, that's on the house, I always pay. So there's an added.
There you go. Yeah. That's a win-win-win. I mean, you're getting knowledge, you're getting food, and you're getting a free check. At least leave the tip, guys. But no, appreciate you coming back on and having we had we had no clue what we were going to talk about when we got him on here. And he said, let's just have a candid conversation. This is all top of mind shit for us as business owners, as we all go down this journey. And this is who we like to interview. These are the type of conversations we like to have because this is what's truly helpful, not selling a course, not selling a whatever. So Eric, we appreciate you. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm Ian from Equity Warehouse. It's Jason from Hard Money Bankers, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.